Welcome to Policing TV. Each week, we will explore the highlights from our latest videos, diving into topics like AI, technology, drugs, and the people shaping the future of policing. In this clip, explore the unique realities of policing across Britain's overseas territories with insights from senior leaders, from wearing multiple hats to building strong community ties in some of the world's most remote locations.
Because it's so small, the small territories very rarely do you have one job. So I was the chief of police, I was the prison governor, chief immigration officer, head of the fire service, head of sea rescue, head of emergency planning. But what kind of got me the job, I think, was they were then just developing an airport and they wanted someone with airport policing experience. So it was a fascinating job for all of those reasons and those hats I had to wear. So one day you would be policing and the next day you'll be in the prison dealing with some issues in the prison. Then we had to develop a sea rescue service. Overseas, I'd encourage this. This first tip is, unless you have to make a decision in the first 3 months, don't. Because you'll make a better one some months down the line. And so whilst there is some similarities, they're immensely different territories. And St. Helena is not quite crimeless. It does have crimes, but it's actually, in terms of community, a very safe community. Very safe. And it will have the number of crimes in a year that Turks and Caicos has in a month. So, for example, one crucial area is when we have an incident, say a police-related shooting, to help the independence of that investigation, we would assist each other by sending investigators to other territories. So there is a level.
And I suppose the really good example of that recently for me was we had a number of very serious incidents on the island, unfortunately murder and attempted murder, and the Royal Anguilla Police Force was at saturation capacity in relation to investigative and responsive to those incidents. So I was able to lean into the FCDO through the Governor's Office, through Andrew, and we received a number of deployments to support us. And at the moment, we're currently sitting at 95. So this year, through budget negotiations, I have managed to negotiate with the government an increase in budget that will probably bring us closer to 110, 112. We're established for about 130, so we'll try and push on next year and the year after to try and bring us to where we are. One is police corruption, and another one is the murder of a customs officer in the first week that I arrived. And if I put into some context for the viewers and yourself, I think I arrived on island on the 29th, 30th of April last year. And within the first 8 days, there was the brutal murder of Garmin Greenaway, a customs officer outside his house, and 6 other attempted murders. I put that into the context of 95 police officers.
So absolutely great police force. It's a small force. There's 28 of us in total. We run the entire control room for the island, so maritime, fire, police, ambulance. We are isolated down here. We're very dependent, as are a lot of as I come on to St. Helena and Ascension when I've just finished with the Falklands. We're very dependent on that boat once a month to bring in us our supplies. And you very quickly learn to be very self-sufficient. Last year, I think we had 48 arrests for the year. I know some of your viewers that are watching in their forces are thinking, goodness me, I had that in an hour. So it is safe. There's no or very little acquisitive crime, very little theft. Burglaries are unheard of. Everybody looks out for each other. Our main problems are really public order, drink-related type incidents. People have a little bit too much to drink. The problems we face, so the difference between the UK and policing an overseas territory, there's far less of you, but you've got to provide the whole spectrum of policing. So I have to police nationally on probably what is, in some areas, a shift of 20. There's 28 of us covering 24 hours, covering the entire remit. So there's 2 or 3 officers wearing different hats. So negotiator, supervisor, peace, covering, as I say, covering a numerous things. A story really at Christmas, last Christmas, we had someone walk into the front office with £600 in cash and handed it over, said, "I've just found this outside in the street." It's that kind of community. Anyway.
In this next clip, retired Chief Inspector Catherine Pritchard reflects on well-being, leadership and the power of asking, "How are you really feeling?" The vital role of advocates in helping officers feel seen, supported and valued, beyond policy and performance targets.
It's like just completely broke down. And it took about 5 or 6 times for him to say, "It's not your fault." And I just wonder, do we have that same level of persistence without it seeming persistent, to be able to check in with people and imagine ways to find out, look, how are you really feeling? Like that thing you dealt with yesterday, or I know you're going through in this your life and you dealt with X, or no, you just seem to me a little bit not quite there. How are you feeling? I'm fine. No, how are you really feeling? It's like, I don't know. I wonder whether we just stop at the first one.
I know. And on that point, I retired at the end of my second diagnosis, and personnel and HR who just started asked me when I was emptying my things out of the dark locker room, and you know those horrible black bin bags coming off the shelf, and it was there just left, and I still had a bald head and all these bags around me, and she didn't know me, and she could have been my daughter, and she just went, "Are you okay with this, or do you want me to do it?" And I thought that really made a difference, because it shows the culture of that environment. She didn't have to say that. She could have said, "I'll wait for you outside." But she cared enough to say, "I can do this, Catherine. It looks..." She was intimating that it looked difficult, and it was. But she cared enough to ask, and that's the true nature of an organisation, where you get people that have just started, that don't know me, but recognised the motive transactional. It wasn't just a transactional thing I was doing. It was a big deal for me. And she recognized it.
Yeah, it's probably something that individual remembers as well, and maybe one of their proud moments. So I'm just thinking here again, and you know, this is a theme of these interviews, for me to be thinking about, for us to be thinking about what we're proud of, and to what extent are we asking those questions? Like, we've got our performance regime, we've got targets to hit, and I'm sure individuals, leaders often ask questions about, and rightly so, you know, burglaries, arrests, you know, these things are important. I don't want to detract from that, but to what extent are they asking questions, their teams, to say, tell me a story about something you're proud of that you've done to help one of your team who's vulnerable for some reason?
Yeah.
How many times does that question get asked?
I know. Yeah.
It's rhetorical, really. I'm not expecting you to have the answer, Catherine, but I know you do work with a lot of leaders, and I wonder to what extent is that just asking those questions, those types of questions, because if that question is not being asked, why not?
I know.
Why not?
And life gets, as I didn't travel all the way up the pyramid, but even halfway up that pyramid, that your time is more compressed. And I must admit, I didn't get asked that very often. As I was an LPU commander, it didn't happen very often. So that's where your friends and family, colleagues can help look after each other. Really, really important.
And I keep wheeling back to that. How do we systemize that as a leader? How would you systemize that as a leader without it being policy? Like, and I think it just goes back to the power of the question. Like, I think the most powerful things you can ask are questions, and often that question will lead to quite sure if that question was asked of a group of sergeants, tell me a story about something you've done recently that you're really proud of in respect of supporting one of your team who may be vulnerable. You may scratch your head the first week and go, I've not got an answer to that. But if you then left and said, tell you what, I'll ask you that question again next week. What do you think most sergeants would have up their sleeve for that?
Yeah, something good.
Yeah, something good.
In this last clip of the week, City of London Police Commissioner Pete O'Doherty reflects on how police leadership has shifted from traditional command and control models to more collaborative, adaptive approaches. He explains why listening to every voice is key to tackling today's complex challenges in policing.
What I felt was a suggestion that the leadership style in policing was different some 30 years ago to the leadership style that there is, particularly amongst chief constables and commissioners these days. I've worked in policing 35 years now, and I have my own views on this, but this is a conversation with you rather than with me. So what's your thoughts on that? Have things changed in terms of leadership, particularly leadership from the very top in those 30 years? And is that change good or not so good?
I've got very clear views on this. When I joined policing, and indeed when you think about 30 years ago, the leadership framework was hierarchical, directive, command and control. And that's because policing as a service was designed to respond to crisis. So if you've got a public order situation or terrorist attack, you need to have real clarity about who's the decision maker at the operational, tactical, strategic levels. There's no time for workshops and debates. It's let's go out and keep the peace and keep people alive. But as policing changed and demand changed, where policing is at the moment is a lot of what we do isn't crisis management. It's dealing with financial challenges. It's around how do we change the culture? How do we improve inclusion, diversity? How do we use systems and technology and data more effectively? And so the best way to solve what we call our wicked problems or complex problems is to be able to tap into and leverage the skills, the ideas, the qualifications, the experience of everyone in the organization. But these people will not speak to you if they only speak when you give them permission. And they won't help you make good decisions if they know that it's just going to be you making the decision as well. And I walk around wearing my position on my shoulder, which can help in a crisis but may hinder a discussion on how we solve a complex problem. So it has changed. And we've gone from transactional leadership to transformational leadership and adaptive leadership, whereby we create a culture where regardless of how long you've been in policing or what job you have or what qualifications you have, everyone views count. And what I want to be able to do is to hoover up all of those ideas and views across the organisation to help me make the best decision. And if a 22-year-old digital native comes to me and says, Pete, in relation to this new cyber policy, I'm sorry, you've not made the right decision. I know more about this than you do, and here's my views. I need to be willing to change my decision. And then if I do that, my staff make sure we make the right decisions and people speak to me. There's still work to be done, Bernard, but it's definitely moved forward.
Thank you for watching. Tune in next week.